Hey, welcome to the CT Sports Talent Show. My name is Christopher Saunders, and I'm pleased to have on with me the new head coach for the Naugatuck Greyhounds boys basketball program. John Mariano is with me. Coach, I appreciate you coming on.
Chris, it's a pleasure to be on the show with you. I feel privileged to be on here. I always follow your stuff. The 2 years I was out of coaching, it really helped me scratch that itch because I did miss it. And you do a great job for the coaches and players in our community.
I appreciate that. It's always a pleasure to be able to cover, obviously, the back, you could see the background, the NVL. That's where I've started broadcasting, and I've been able to do football and basketball and other sports, and it's always been fun. But, to be able to have you back and, when I saw that you had the opportunity to be able to get hired by Naugatuck for the boys basketball job, it's great to see an NVL guy kind of come back home in a way. It's not like you were too far. I know you were kind of watching from afar when you kind of, were able to kind of get away for a little bit and handle the family business. But to have you back, man, I mean, how do you feel? How's it feel?
I feel great. I've just been ecstatic. I to be back coaching in the sport that I love. That really, I've been involved at a very very heavy level with basketball since like the age of like 6 or 7.
Mhm.
Really was just like honestly maniacal about it as a player. And then when I was done playing, I transitioned into coaching. Like in my young 20s, I was coaching college basketball, and I just had a wonderful experience. I mean, it's just always been there. It's been part of my identity. And when I was away, I had an unbelievable experience with my wife and my two girls, Elle and Ava. My wife's name is Jill, and it's just been just such a blessing to experience fatherhood with them and to be able to dedicate all of me to that. And I was having a great time. And it's funny how timing works. I mean, I guess you can't really question it, but when Mike Wilson left for Holy Cross, I teach in Naugatuck. I'm from Naugatuck. Naugatuck is really special to me. And it was really one of those things like I had to hit the ground running and do everything I can to make sure that they view me as a viable candidate for that job. And I was fortunate enough to be hired by athletics and the admin there. And I couldn't be more happy to hit the ground running with the other coaches and the community and the players that we have returning.
Now, before we hit on the Naugatuck job, I kind of want to go back to your playing career really quickly. You played at St. Anselm. You had a fantastic career there. And then, as you just mentioned, you were part of the staff at a young age, early 20s, right? I mean, that to me kind of speaks to it's one thing if you graduate college and you're like, all right, I'm going to go back and, coach high school. Okay. You see that happen a lot. You don't see a lot of young, early 20-year-olds coaching pretty high level basketball in college. Did that kind of tell you like, hey, I think I have something here. I think I have a second act, a second career in a game that I love.
Yeah, so that really was I personally feel like one of the most defining experiences of my life, even more than playing in college and my high school experience. I was 23, named the full-time assistant at St. Anselm College, and St. Anselm is a Division II school. We have 10 scholarships. It's high level. The NE10 really is. A lot of people call it it's another Division I league. It just has that Division II label, and you know it's intense. And the way those small colleges, Division II, Division III, you really only have one full-time assistant and the head coach, obviously. And so it's really you're handling an abundant workload. You're balancing a lot of, you're wearing a lot of hats, balancing a lot of things. It was intense. And I was, like I said, 23 years old. Working probably 90 to 100 hours a week, during the season, like crazy. And then it's not like when the season ends in March, I have the next 6 months off. No, we're going right into spring recruiting and I'm traveling everywhere in the Northeast. Then kids are coming up for summer school. And at the same time, we're running spring workouts before the school year ends. And then I'm planning July and figuring out who we're going to offer scholarships to. And okay, this kid Colgate offered this kid, so who's next on the list? And really, it's really just a rat race, and it's nonstop, and you can get consumed in it. And
Mm.
I think that I'm so thankful to have had that experience so young because it really made me uncomfortable, especially the first year or two at St. Anselm because I had former teammates that were on the team. So I went from okay, I was a captain my senior year. So, I know they had respect for me, but it was at the same time, we're like friends too. And
Yeah.
so we had to kind of not break the friendship, but draw that line, that this is more of a professional relationship right now. And we need to be cordial and to figure this out. And that was a really interesting dynamic that not only I went to, but also the kids I played with. And it made me work on a lot of my weaknesses. I had a lot of trouble with public speaking when I was young. So it kind of threw me right into the fire. Any insecurity that I had about evaluating players or my knowledge of the game was tested right away because we're coaching in a higher environment. I mean, Southern Connecticut and Bentley and Southern New Hampshire were rated one of the best Division II programs in the country. They don't care that I'm 23 and need to develop still. I mean, it's a livelihood. So it was a great experience. It really grew me as a person, and I gained a lot of confidence from it.
Do you think being able to be a part of that, right? And you had some other stops as well, Canterbury, I know such, and you're able to kind of, like you said, the circuit and kind of see everything. Do you think being able to go through that kind of help mold who you are now as a coach?
Yes. So I'm glad you brought that up because I was actually thinking about this the other day.
Okay.
So I played at St. Anselm for a great coach. His name is Keith Dixon. He's one of the best coaches in the country. He's like an offensive savant. We were a motion team. We ran no plays. It was all concept based. Ball moved. We sprayed it around.
Mm,
And then I coached under him for 4 years. So really, I was very it was very strong, and that's how we should play the game. And I really hadn't seen something else or been a part of something else.
mhm,
So I would say during those times when I was at St. A's, I was I had a lot of self belief in that basketball. We were playing it the right way, and
mm.
this is the way we should do it. And then I was briefly at Brown, and then I was at Canterbury, and then with Woodland. I'm able to develop different philosophies and see how different things are done, and also kind of blend that with what we did at St. A's. I've really those stops, I think, for lack of a better term, probably humbled me a little bit. In that, like the saying is, like be a student, have a student's mindset, right?
Mm.
Know less, learn more, right? Don't act like you know it all. You should always have a learner's mindset. And
Mm.
I think that those other stops, really helped me become that. And now I'm like a junkie. I mean, my Twitter feed is just filled with all these different coaches, and I have my notes organized. So if I see a ball handling drill I send it to the ball handling section of my notes. If there's a zone set I like, I'll send it to that section. So I really try and build my database from coaches around the country, because really Instagram and Twitter have really turned into like, you can really like get a coaching degree on those websites now.
I know social media, I mean, it's a blessing and a curse. If you use it the right way, it can be something to be able to, like you said, gain as much information as possible. In other ways, it can also be a curse. We've seen a lot of that during 2020 when COVID, when everybody was on their phones and they had nothing else to do, right? I want to hit on what you just said as far as, every one of your stops, you're able to pick up more and more information. I think that kind of fits to the college, you go out and recruit players that fit your system. High school, it's a little bit different. You got what you got, right? Now, there are some areas where you can, if you're at, a private school, it allows you to have the opportunity to maybe get some kids through whatever. But when you're in a public school, what you got is what you got, right? And I think for you specifically, and obviously anybody who's in a public school, when you're able to morph into what you have, right? I mean, I'm sure you know Coach Gamari at Torrington. When I first started at Torrington, when I was broadcasting years ago, when I got into the broadcasting business, what really impressed me about Coach Gamari is that he could go from a coach 5 in, 5 out hockey style to then, if he felt like he had a good six, he would use that good six, five starters, one bench. He would go with what he had. And the fact that he was so adjustable, I feel like that speaks to the kind of coach he is. And I know you could speak to that for your coaching style and others too.
Yeah, so I think at the high school level, like when you're at college, right? So you recruit towards your style, and
Correct.
that's why, like at St. A's, we were a motion offense based team, so we wanted skill,
Mhm.
IQ. We got guys that can shoot 40% from three on a daily night and contested jumpers. You don't always have that at the high school level, and so I've tried to blend a lot of those motion offense concepts. I guess I can't call myself a motion coach anymore because we do have sets. But I try and work different concepts in so that we kind of flow into it. So I try and simplify it for the high school kids.
Yeah.
Um, I do believe in having an identity in your program. So, each year I like to say, like, you have a menu, right? And you might take, one year you might take, this item off the menu, right? And add something. But at the end of the day, we
Mhm.
are who we are and who we want to believe in. And the way I want to play basketball is I want the kids to play offense fast. I want them to move the ball side to side, and I want them to share it and be playmakers and decision makers. So whatever sets, concepts I decide for that year, at the end of the day, that's what I want our identity to be. I want us to be a team where we share the basketball and play together. Defensively, I am a little more stuck in my ways in that I am a man-to-man guy. And
Okay.
uh, I really, I am hard. It's one of the things that I am hard-headed about, and that I believe that when you play man, right? So you want, like all coaches we talk about, we want our players to be resilient. We want them to be gritty. We want them to be tough. And
Mhm.
I think that when you instill the man-to-man defense in your team, you bring those characteristics and habits out. And
Mhm.
you know what? Like, it's tough because I understand that zone works and I don't judge anyone that plays zone, and I understand everyone's different. Um, but I believe, like, in when I coach my team, I want accountability, right? And what's better to have accountability than man-to-man defense? So it's like, look, you got beat off the dribble, so we've got to work on your game so that doesn't happen again. Or this was your help. You were the low man on the weak side. We've got to get you outside the launching zone. You need to rotate down. And it's very easy for the kids to pickpoint it. And I think the good teams that I've coached can
Mhm.
fix it themselves. So I know in that way I am old school in that, like, what's it, Bobby Knight and Danny Hurley's like that. Not that I'm comparing anything to the Hurleys, but I am one of those guys that I try and really have man to man be our primary defense. And the other thing is too, right? Because I've
Mhm.
had people say this to me in the past. It's like, well, coach, we're kind of getting beat off the dribble. Like, we should go zone. We can't stay in front of them.
Mhm.
I remember as a player looking over to the bench and my college coach and being like, you know what? We can't guard them. Like, when is he going to go zone?
Yeah.
And he never went zone, ever. And what happened was we bought in because we knew he wasn't bailing us out. It's like,
Yes.
I better figure this out or they're going to score 120 on us. And
Mhm.
so I try and I try and keep that type of toughness and resilience in my mind when I'm coaching, and that, you
Mhm.
know, we need to, like, tell the kids, like, no, we need to buckle down and we need to guard and stop someone and not just hope that they miss.
You mentioning about the kind of different defenses, right? I know Crosby's known for their obviously 3-point shooting and they play zone defense, but they're athletic. They've always had kids who can do that, going back to obviously winning a bazillion titles and such, right? They had the ability to do that. Teams who are not as athletic may have to play a little bit more of switching defenses, man, zone, 3-2 zone, whatever the case may be. And I think your style, and I was never good enough to play basketball at the high school level because Sacred Heart was a monster. They were a world beater, and Carroll was a fantastic coach. Now he's doing his thing for Naugatuck, coaching the
Absolutely.
girls. And I'm glad that he's back in the game after Sacred Heart closed and so on. So the
Absolutely.
point I'm trying to make is to kind of land this here. I love when I'm calling games and I see man-to-man defense because it's mano a mano. It's almost like in football, and we were talking about football. It's almost like when Moff for, Naugatuck, since we're talking about Naughty, Moff will bring the blitz. He'll bring everybody. He'll bring a full on everyone to go after the quarterback. And it's really now testing the offensive line to see if the opposing offensive line can block long enough. More often than not, they can't. So the point I'm trying to make is you sticking to that man-to-man defense and trusting your kids that they're not going to be almost in a way put down by the fact if they struggle in practice or in some games, but it's like, no, coach believes in me that I can get this done. I just have to work on it and just improve. And I know I can do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not easy. And there's definitely some games where it goes bad. I mean, I've been a part of some games where we got our teeth kicked in, and it would. But and I should say I have used zone before, and I have some secondary defenses, but I really, really, really want to challenge the kids from every stop that I've ever been is I really believe in that man-to-man defense. And we might tweak the man some years, right? So if we're a little more athletic, maybe we're trapping ball screens, maybe
Mhm.
we're up pressing, maybe on some of our slow, teams that are less athletic, right? So maybe we're going under all ball screens, maybe we're sagging off and just stick hand arms length away. And so there's different ways you can do it, and I definitely adjust based on the team that we have.
Mhm.
But that's definitely my goal going into this season, and we'll see if I can stick to it.
Now, I want to talk about the obviously you being hired by Naugatuck. Obviously, anytime you replace somebody who is as well respected and somebody who accomplished so much as Wilson did with Naugatuck, it's always going to be difficult. But I think to have someone again, you go from one Noggy guy to another Noggy guy, so it's kind of like it's almost like interchangeable pieces, if that makes sense. So I think it fits in so many ways. For you specifically, how difficult or non-difficult do you think it will be, or maybe it won't be able to, because what Wilson did, he almost a lot of ways left a blueprint, right? And now you're there to obviously add to it and add to the legacy of a Naugatuck Greyhound program. So for you, how difficult do you think, or non-difficult do you think it will be to kind of not change too much, but also have your own vision? Because you do have your own eyes and vision as far as what a program is.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you brought up Mike Wilson, because I definitely wanted to talk about him.
Hmm.
Um, before we dive into that question, and that, Mike did an unbelievable job at Naugatuck, and I can't say enough good things about Mike. I feel like you used the word blueprint, like, so he's left a blueprint, and he also left a blueprint for me as a player. So Mike is about 8 or 9 years older than me. So I grew up in town, and I watched Mike in high school. I remember going to the Naugatuck basketball camp and Mike being a counselor there, and it was like, he was like your hero. You know what I'm saying? Like, Mike he was so good. He played with such intensity and such flair, and really he was an alpha on the court. It didn't matter who they played. Mike did not care. He would go out there and just do his thing. And I remember that from a young age. And the best thing about Mike too is he's so personable and really makes you feel valued. So I can remember being at camp and Mike talking to me.
Hmm.
And really, he was, and there's a lot of other guys from Naugatuck that did this too, but Mike was the one that I connected to because we were the closest in age, and he was so good to me. Um, growing up, I wanted to have a high school career just like Mike did. That was the goal. He had set that bar, and here I am, 20, 25 years later, and now I'm trying to meet his bar that he left for the coaching aspect at Naugatuck. And so I'm really looking forward to the challenge. It's going to be a huge challenge. I got huge shoes to fill, but I'm really looking forward to it. And I know there'll be ups and downs, and there'll be games where it doesn't go well. But at the end of the day, that
Hmm.
this to me, coaching in general is more than that, and especially for myself,
Hmm.
coaching at Naugatuck with all the history that I've been around in this town, it really means a lot to me. And not just Mike too. Like, I was around, like, the gym is named after my grandfather. My grandfather was the coach uh, in the 1960s, and they were great. They had they had a ton of guys. I think his name was Ed Slimsinski. He played at UConn. He was a 6'10" kid. Billy Rado, who
Yep.
played at University of Georgia and scored like 20 points a game. He was unbelievable. In fact, when I got the job at Brown, there was a reporter from the Providence Journal. We was watching our practice, and he brought up Billy Rado. He said he was the best player that he's ever seen not make the NBA. He was an NBA player. And so Billy was actually my dad's high school coach in the 80s. And Billy, we moved across town. He was my neighbor shortly. So I'd be outside shooting around, and Billy would be in the window, hold your follow through, or like, bend your knees, use your legs. And by the end of it, he would just come outside and be like doing shooting drills with me, and giving me pointers, then playing me one on one, and like literally not letting me score. I mean, he was so competitive. And then now that I'm going down this road, there's other guys. Keith Rado, Billy's son, was a
Yep.
great player, played at Sacred Heart. John Minacucci, who was, actually came to our practice today, coached at Wolcott for a while, coached at the Connecticut Select. He was another one that I was around growing up and still am around, who really laid the groundwork for us. Gary Churchill played in the 70s.
Mhm.
He was 1,000 point scorer at the University of Bridgeport. This guy Jim Mealy played at AIC, so he was, when he left AIC, he was the all-time leading scorer. And there was a freshman on the team that ended up breaking his record by the name of Jim Calhoun.
Big deal.
Pretty big deal. Jim Mealy used to run a camp in Naugatuck called Practice Makes Permanent. And it was really, I've been to camps all over the country, both as a player and as a coach. And it really was one of the best camps I've ever been a part of. He made basketball fun, engaging. He taught you how to compete against yourself, not necessarily others, right? So he used to talk about that comparison is the thief of joy, right? So he would give you a score sheet and you would go against yourself for different drills all week. And I even use that in camps that I run today. So I know I was just very long-winded, but my upbringing in Naugatuck, because of my grandfather and my father, I was able and fortunate enough to be around some great historical figures in Naugatuck. And so when I took this job and when I go to practice, I think about those guys every single day.
Mhm. It's one of those things where, like you just said, every time you walk into the gym, not saying that you need any sort of motivation or thinking about like, I can't have a bad day, but you have the support, obviously, of so many people within Noggy. You have family who have come through Naugatuck, and that's got to be such a cool thing that, not to say you're going to get emotional every time you walk into the gym now as a head coach of the Naugatuck Greyhounds, but that's really cool. That is really
Yeah.
cool, man. You know?
Yeah. It's been, we haven't played a game yet. And no
No.
matter what happens, win or lose, I'll always be thankful for this opportunity. It really is. It's like a surreal feeling. It really is.
John, I really appreciate you coming on. We've just about run out of time. I could talk to you for hours. We didn't even get into some other questions, but maybe I can get you back on before the season starts so we can really dive into that. But seriously, man, congratulations on the Noggy job. It was a shame when you were coaching at Woodland because I never got the opportunity to call one of your games when you were coaching there. Obviously, because of just running around and everything else. There were a couple times I had Woodland games and then I'd get switched and do other games, and it was like, okay, whatever. But now you being at Naugatuck, and because that's one of our premier games that we usually call for basketball and especially football, Anderson knows about that. I'll be seeing you quite a bit, at Naugatuck for basketball and hopefully for football as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm really looking forward to that, Chris. It'll be hopefully we can put on a good performance for you. And I really, like I said earlier, I really appreciate everything you do for the coaches and players in this community. I mean, it really gives a lot of spotlight and broadens the reach that the NVL has because we really do have a lot of good coaches and players in this league. So thank you for everything you do for the community.
I appreciate that, man. That means a lot. That wrap things up on the CT Sports Town Show. So until next time, stay safe. CT stands for Connecticut Town. I'm Jeremy Find them all. Enjoy the show, everybody, and be well.